Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you all for joining us. We've already had a day of forward thinking, inspiring sessions, and we're not about to let up on you yet. We are honoured at STV, as supporters of Ad Net Zero, to be able to host such an important event for the industry and only a stone's throw from the COP26 campus. More than ever, Scots are acutely aware of climate change. Our weatherman Sian Batty recently worked out that Stornoway in the north of Scotland is receiving over 200,000 bathtubs of additional annual rainfall due to climate change, just when we thought it wasn't possible for Scotland to get any wetter. That's why over half of Scots have said that they've tried to become more environmentally conscious over the past 12 months. They are recycling more, using less electricity and single-use plastics, but they also bring these considerations to mind when it comes to the brands they interact with. We all know how vital the climate change conversation is, not just that we raise awareness, but that we take action to tackle the issues that contribute to this crisis. I'm joined by STV Chief Executive Officer Simon Pitts and Sales and Strategy Director Scotland, Danielle Kelly, for this Q&A session on how STV are playing their part as a broadcaster, producer and leading media platform, and encouraging our audience and advertisers to join us on the journey towards net zero. We'll be chatting about how STV Zero commitment, in line with Ad Net Zero's ambition to become carbon net zero by 2030, how we are helping sustainability-focused businesses increase their reach through the STV Green Fund, and also our responsibility as Scotland's biggest broadcaster to lead the way in achieving those goals and sharing the message with the wider Scottish public. So without further ado, let's welcome my guests Simon and Danielle. Thank you both for coming. Simon, maybe if we could perhaps start with you. Why is it important for the ad industry to become carbon net zero by 2030?
Well, I think it's important for all industries. As businesses, we all need to be capable of seeing the bigger picture. Of course, we obsess a little bit about financial performance and shareholder returns, but it has to be about more than that. And I think when we look back on this decade in particular, in the next generations to come, we're not going to be judged on whether we've delivered good profit year in, year out. It will be whether we've stood up and done our bit in the face of the biggest challenge we've ever faced. And I think we've been reminded in the last 18 months about what's important in life, what's important in business. And here we have the greatest challenge of them all. And I think actually the most exciting thing about it is that being responsible as a business is also good business these days. So it's what our colleagues want at STV and across, no doubt, the entire sector. It's what our viewers want. It's what our advertisers want. And ultimately, it's also what our investors want. And if you're sat in a broadcaster or an advertiser or a brand, of course, this has particular resonance because we have a real opportunity through the power of television, through the power of our brands, to change behaviour amongst millions of people, to prompt different purchasing choices, to different lifestyles. And that's a great responsibility, but it's also very exciting. And I think we'll be pushing somewhat of an open door, because if you look at all the research, and we look at consumer research all the time, you see that Scottish consumers in particular, I think 2/3 of them, the last survey I looked at, were extremely preoccupied about the environmental and social credentials of a brand. Up to 50% of those consumers more likely to buy from a brand if they're 100% sustainable. So there's a real exciting opportunity here, and I'm sure Danielle will talk a bit more about that in a minute.
So you've spoken there about the opportunities then. So how does STV plan to embrace these opportunities and reduce its own carbon impact?
Well, we're in a privileged place as a broadcaster, as a producer for other broadcasters and networks, to make a real difference here, to affect behaviours and deliver change. We're acutely aware of that, and as a result, we set out much earlier this year a comprehensive sustainability plan, STV Zero, to become a net zero carbon business by 2030. It's a concerted program of action and targets right across the company to deliver real change. It is sponsored by everyone in the business, but the senior managers are also incentivized and accountable against those targets. And it covers a whole range of different areas, as you might expect. I mean, take energy usage, for example. We are targeting a move to 100% renewable electricity by 2022. We're actually already at over 90% renewable electricity, up from virtually a standing start, only 7% a little over a year ago. We are changing our fleet of cars to hybrids or electric cars by the end of this year. We are targeting a reduction to at least half of the current business travel that we've been doing before the pandemic by 2025 at the latest. Little things around the office, like getting rid of waste paper bins, moving to smart photocopiers. All these things can make a difference. As a program maker, we've committed that whether we're making a show for ourselves or as STV Studios for another network, we will be Albert certified on all our programming by 2022, which means we'll be carbon neutral. And of course, working together with the advertising industry, we're doing a range of things, including launching our Advertising Green Fund, £1 million fund to support Scottish SMEs as they go green, which again, Danielle, I'm sure will expand on soon. So there's a lot that we're doing. We've made a good start. I think our team are incredibly energized and excited about what we can achieve together. It's right at the top of the agenda, but we have a lot to do, clearly.
So lots of positive news there about supporting behavioural change within the workplace. Could I ask you then, that as a broadcaster, what role does STV play in engaging Scotland with those behavioural changes in climate change and sustainability? And how is STV using its platforms to do this?
Well, I think that's when it gets really exciting, actually, because there's one thing galvanizing your team within a company to get your own house in order and do the right thing, and it's vital. It's quite another engaging with the entire audience and the millions of people that watch us day in, day out. But that is exactly what we are trying to do. Again, we have this opportunity. We reach 3.2 million Scots every month with our channel and our platform. We have an opportunity to bring this complex issue to life for people, to make it accessible, to try and make sure we do it in an unpreachy way, in an informed way, so that people are inspired to make small changes. And we can do that through doing what we do best, which is telling stories to people. I'll give you an example. There's something exciting going on this week, because for the first time in TV land, the nation's favourite soap operas are getting together to delve into climate issues that affect us all. So Coronation Street, Emmerdale, I've mentioned those first because they're on our channel, Holby City, Casualty, EastEnders, Hollyoaks are teaming up to have common story arcs and story themes. It sort of blows my mind a bit that we're doing this. That means that we're going to potentially see Phil Mitchell from EastEnders on the cobbles of Coronation Street, which is very odd, but it will really hit home. And then closer to home, on our channel, we're right in the middle of a run for Don't Waste Scotland, hosted by our very own Sean Batty, mostly in his shorts, it seems, where he goes around as a weatherman, but also a climate expert, to a whole range of different people and activities across Scotland, and explains how we can all do our bit in a simple way to make greener choices and live better, more responsible lifestyles. And he's doing it in a warm way. It's an accessible show, and it's hitting hundreds of thousands of Scots every week. We're doing plenty of other things too. So sponsoring a new strand of shorts called Little Changes, again really focusing on the small things that we can each do in our day-to-day lives to make a big impact on the climate. We've just developed or about to launch our first ever eco promo campaign, where in between the shows we'll be talking about what people can do to make a difference. And of course, and you're part of this as our climate correspondent, the big responsibility and accountability we have as a news outlet to cover this huge topic, hugely complex topic in an accessible, in an informed way, not just during COP, although it will be intense and all over our channel over the next couple of weeks, but also beyond. You're our first ever climate correspondent. I'm sure there'll be plenty to do, and you'll be telling us you're not just going to hang up your boots when COP finishes. So there's a lot we can do using our platform and using our storytelling ability to get these important messages out to our audience as quickly as we possibly can.
And I believe we're actually able to have a quick look now at just some of the things that STV's been up to.
Scotland is beautiful, and it's full of amazing people doing their bit to keep it that way. Join me, Sean Batty, as I meet some of Scotland's sustainability champions, from paddling for litter to using our gardens for good. Reconnect with our beautiful country and discover what you can do to keep Scotland green and clean. Don't Waste Scotland, Wednesday at 8 on STV and STV Player.
Who had that bright idea? Little Changes, sponsored by Smart. The winds of change are blowing.
I love wind!
Little Changes, sponsored by Smart Meters.
So Danielle, if we could maybe come to you now then, what role does advertising play in our journey towards becoming net zero?
Advertising plays a massive role. Particularly TV advertising has been recognised by the UN General Assembly as really core to decision making and impacting how people behave. And that's really why it's hugely important. Simon's mentioned what we're doing with programming, that lean back effect of television in people's living rooms, being able to share those accessible issues, really emphasise what net zero means to people and make it feel part of everyday life and really normalise it. We've seen lots of really exciting things that brands are doing in that space, and the reason they're doing it is it really matters to consumers. 71% of consumers are more likely to purchase a product if it's fully recyclable. That's a lot of the work we do working with brands, because if those brands aren't taking cognizance of that, then they're not going to be able to resonate with consumers. So it's a very circular economy that we live in, and that idea of really capitalising on what consumers want is good for brands, it's good for their pockets, but it's good for the planet. So that's why we all really need to work together to achieve that goal.
So on that then, so how are STV engaging with advertisers on topics such as sustainability and climate change?
So there's probably three core things we're doing. The first of which is really driving awareness with the brands we work with. And we do that through a couple of channels. One, our growth academies, which are free to attend events on lots of different themes, whether it be marketing effectiveness, whether it be PR, but we've done a number round about green issues and green credentials, working with experts like Zero Waste Scotland, bringing in some of the members of the Green Fund who've already explored that and have seen success, so that other brands can really learn from each other and share that knowledge. The other thing that we're doing is innovative advertising solutions. So we have just coming up in the next couple of weeks, innovative green ad breaks. So what we're doing is having STV Proud to Present breaks that run across the schedule, round about things like Pride of Britain, with their first sustainability awards in there. And these breaks have lots of different brands, but are all sharing green, sustainable messaging. So everyone from Scottish Water to ScotRail to Ductform, who are an insulation specialist. So really identifying it to consumers and signposting it so that brands can really be part of the conversation, essentially. And that's what we all want, to make sure that normalisation is part of everyday life.
And you mentioned STV's Green Fund there. We actually have the advert here with us. Let's take a look. So Danielle, tell us about STV's Green Fund initiative then. Why did STV feel there was a need for this?
We launched the Green Fund in March 2021, and it's an extension of our already successful Growth Fund, where we've done over 500 deals. We've worked with businesses right across Scotland, really to make TV advertising accessible to SMEs and larger businesses so that they can be exposed to the power of television. So listening to brands, listening to consumers, 42% of consumers are more likely to purchase a product if it's sustainable versus a competitor that's not. And it really struck us that there's something that we can do, capitalising on that power of the audience that we have. At STV, we reach 81% of Scots a month. That's a huge number of people. And if we can allow brands to get their messaging in front of those people, it's really, really impactful for them. So the fund is working really well. Some of the members, I was chatting to one of our kind of launch members, Food Hero Scott, the other week, and they're a really interesting business because what they're doing is working with food and drink producers, so chefs, farmers, cafes, restaurants, to really educate people that are going into those establishments to understand the provenance of their food, to understand where it comes from, and making sure we're using local produce, but actually shining a light on the work that takes for these businesses. So we partnered with them, and speaking to Mo, who's one of their founders, he was actually telling me that within the first month of them working with us, being on air, they actually achieved their first year's target ahead of time. So really, really powerful to see what a direct difference that it can make to businesses. And that's what the biggest opportunity really is, because we know it's what consumers want. And if businesses can tap into that and brands can tap into that, the power of that advertising can just go so much further. The other business that we've worked with in the Green Fund so far, Edinburgh Boiler Company, who they are planting trees to offset every boiler that they install. And for one tree, they can sort of take 700 miles of a car journey, essentially, in terms of an offset. So again, really, really crucial to understand what that actually means. And by sharing that message, it just gives people more insight. And they've actually been able to grow their business as a result. So they started off as the Edinburgh Boiler Company. They're now in Glasgow, Aberdeen, Dundee. So it's been fantastic, not only for the planet, but for them as a business to grow and expand and be able to really flourish as a Scottish business as a result.
So just to, on top of that then, ask, so then why is it important for brands to engage with consumers? You've mentioned a little bit of this already, but particularly for these topics, how important is sustainability to consumers?
Yes, hugely important. We do a lot of research. We're very fortunate. We work with a company called ScotPulse, who are the largest research panel in Scotland. So we're able to get real-time information. And that sort of taps back into how we work with businesses, because we're able to share those insights through our growth academies, through one-on-one bespoke research. Brands can really shape their strategies accordingly. So I think we've spoken about a couple of bits and pieces. Simon mentioned about the likelihood of people to buy a product if it's greener versus another product. Recyclable packaging. There's some brilliant stuff that was seen recently from the likes of Pepsi. They've gone 100% fully recyclable and they're ready to go bottles by the end of next year. But their advert's fantastic, because it's the classic, bottle of soda that looks brilliant, fantastic ad, but actually it tastes better because it's recyclable. Persil are another one that I love just now that looks really great. They've run a campaign for a couple of years all round about, it's good to get kind of dirty, when you're outside playing, curry encouraging kids to kind of get stuck in and be planting and doing things. But, you know, they are now moved their cleaning products to be more plant-based, which is better. Again, recyclable packaging. So all of these, the volume that we start to see coming through, it's all based on consumer demand, and we really know that it makes a difference. The stat that really strikes a chord with me is that almost 40% of Scots are more likely to pay more for a product if it's greener. So actually, you know, there's huge potential for businesses to approach this in a really smart way, do well for the planet, but also make sure that they're tackling consumer demand.
You both mentioned really positive steps forward and seemingly very positive responses from audiences and from consumers. But you've also mentioned this isn't an area without challenge. You know, what are some of the challenges that the advertising industry is facing, and how do we navigate around that?
Well, I mean, this is a really complicated issue. So a part of our job and part of our brand partner's job is to try to simplify it, to make sure it's accessible, to make sure we bring to life the small things that we can do, each of us day to day, that will make a difference if we add it all up, because it can seem like an incredibly daunting challenge for us all. I guess we also, as broadcasters, as brand owners, have to make sure it's not too preachy what we are saying, not least because we're a public service broadcaster with a set of obligations to make sure we're impartial, to make sure we're objective, and that what we say is always accurate and truthful and honest. But we need to bring it to life too, and that is often the challenge, I think, that brands and that storytellers face. But we have to do that every day of the week in the shows that we make, so there's no reason why we can't do that on the biggest challenge that this planet has ever faced.
Do you feel the same, Danielle?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is always any change. So when you want to do something different, it almost seems harder the thought of it than actually doing it sometimes. And I think that the core to it for the industry and for ourselves is partnership. You know, collaboration, learning from each other. We've got fantastic partners, both in the Green Fund, but also in STV Zero, our partnership with smart meters. And we've seen today some of the highlights of that, Don't Waste Scotland, Little Changes programmes. These really all start to multiply, that multiplied effect that comes so much with advertising, as well as the credibility that comes. The more we can talk about these things, the more they just become part of our lives.
So a bit of a difficult one now, but how do we tackle the issue of greenwashing? How do advertisers remain authentic at this time? Perhaps, Danielle, this might be one for you.
So I think absolutely authenticity is at the heart of it. I think being honest about what you're doing right now and where you want to get to, and talking about the now, and being honest, I just say we're not quite there yet. There are things that we want to drive towards, but here's where we're starting. I think also, we touched about being honest and legal. The ESA does a great job in the UK making sure that adverts that you see on television are honest, truthful, legal. People can really trust that. So consumers at home know if they're seeing something and it says this is recyclable packaging, it absolutely is, because that's been verified, it's been substantiated. People can really trust that. And I think trust is crucial. I think we have to be honest with where we are, and we have to trust in what we're seeing.
And on that element of trust then, Simon, is that a similar response to the challenges facing broadcasters during even our coverage of climate change and STV as a whole? Is that a similar challenge that we face?
Yeah, it's our currency, really, as a broadcaster and as a public service broadcaster, that people trust us. And you've seen that, I think, in particular in the last 18 months, when there has been a lot of misinformation out there online in particular. And our job has been to make sure that our viewers get trusted information and facts and insight, as well as escapism too, and storytelling, to take people's minds away sometimes from some of the very difficult situations we found ourselves in. But that is what broadcasting does best. And there is absolutely no reason why it can't do that over the next decade or so as we tackle climate change head on.
So what do you think some of the biggest challenges ahead are then for us?
Well, I think as ever it is about making sure that this is accessible but in an entertaining way. And if ever an industry, advertisers or broadcasters are going to do that, then it's ours. And we just have to make sure we keep being honest with our viewers, but also making sure we tell these stories in an entertaining and accessible way, using the privileged platform that we have to reach millions of, in our case, Scots, every day of every month.
So if I could direct a personal question then to both of you. Danielle, I'll maybe come to you first. As we've spoken about, it's almost an insurmountable challenge ahead. The climate crisis impacts all of us. Do you feel hopeful for the future?
Oh, that's a good question, Laura. I do feel hopeful because I think we have to. We have to look ahead. We have to think, where do we want to live? What do we want the world we live in to be? And I think you need hope, to achieve that. So I think from people I speak to, from the brands we work with, I think everyone is passionate, everyone deeply cares about this and genuinely wants to make a change for all the right reasons that we've spoken about today, but actually because we all want to live and work and, holiday and be in a place that is healthy and happy. And I think, that permeates everything ultimately.
Simon, do you feel hopeful for the future?
I really do. And I think we've reached a bit of a turning point, actually. Mm-hmm. This is now gone beyond a news story and into the way we live our lives. And I can see from the people I talk to, from friends and family and others, that people are thinking about how they change their lives every day, whether it is using less water, or it is renewable energies in our homes, or it is the food we eat. My kids come back from school every day with a story about climate action. My son last Christmas asked for a litter picking kit for Christmas so that he could go out and pick litter in the local neighbourhood. Now obviously he also asked for an Xbox and 3 football kits, but this is getting through, and it is in our day-to-day conversation, and we are identifying ways in which we can change our lives for the better, and that cumulative effect, I think, will make a massive difference, partnered with big business.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much for joining us. Great to end on something positive for all of us. And a fitting note to end on then, a reminder as well that this is just the beginning of the road towards net zero for STV, Scotland and the advertising industry. For the next 2 weeks, Scotland is at the centre of the global climate focus with the most important climate conference since the Paris Agreement. Presidents, Prime Ministers, dignitaries and scientists are meeting, debating and drawing up plans right across the river from us. There is much to be done to tackle climate change, but we are delighted to be on that journey as a broadcaster and as supporters of Ad Net Zero. Many thanks to my guests, Simon Pitt and Danielle Kelly. I'm Laura Piper. Thank you for watching.